So, welcome to the second Facebook Live video and session of the Cultural Footprint project. Today's session is about rethinking the future, Italy's post-pandemic creative and cultural industries, which is also one of the topics that we have already addressed in our recovery manual, is a deliverable of this project. And today we have with us two experts from Matera Hub. So as you can understand, the session is moderated by Matera Hub, which is one of the biggest organizations in Italy, located in Matera, and are oriented to the most of the cultural and creative sectors. So we have together with us Mrs. Giulia Fornari and Mrs. Roberta. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it well. Capo
Zucca.
Chuka. Okay, okay. Mrs. Roberta Capochuca and. Both of them are experts in the cultural and creative sector with a strong background, not only through their projects, but also an academic background. So I'm going to give the floor to our speakers to introduce themselves and to start this interesting session. Thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Alexandra. Hello, everybody again. As you said before, we are from Matera Hub, and I'm very happy to present you Roberta Capozzucca, that is a communication and project design consultant for the cultural sector. And we will understand today something about the most important aspect of the society in Italy regarding the cultural sector. And I don't know if you want to present a bit, or I can start with the first question.
I'm just gonna say a few words about myself. As Julia introduced me, I am a project designer, and my background, my professional and background comes from European cultural politics. And as I left Brussels in 2015 and I moved back to Italy, I started to deal with Italian cultural politics, especially in regards to what was happening in Europe. At the present, I'm a freelance and a consultant for two companies that works with culture, but in two different, slightly different sectors. The first one deals with digitalization of cultural heritage and of the cultural assets of the industry. And the second one is Matera Hub, working with European projects and pilot, I would say, European pilots for the development of the sector. So one as more a national focus and the other one as a more European focus. Alongside, I am a journalist, and in fact, I write on an Italian newspaper about cultural policies and European and Italian investments on culture. And I would say that's enough for now. So we can start, Julia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Roberta. My question is regarding to the first sector that you mentioned, so the digitalization, and we will talk about the National Digitalization Plan. So what are the main initiatives and strategies that this plan include? And if you want to talk about the moment and when it starts, because maybe someone else don't know about.
Okay, so the first policy, actually, I'm going to describe and talk about is the so-called National Plan for Digitalization. It is a plan that stems from, and it actually was funded and conceived under the National and Recovery Fund, so under the Next Generation EU. So straight after the pandemic, as we all know, each member state were asked to think about a plan of recovery for different field and sector. The Italian National Recovery and Resilience Plan had a strong focus on digitalization, Somehow all of the investments and objectives and initiatives that have been designed and also planned for the cultural sector has to do with digitalization. The reason is mainly because of its lack of digital skills among Italian employees and of the Italian public infrastructure. And as you know, the cultural infrastructure is mainly public in Italy. So the national plan for digitalization, as I said, has been funded under the National Recovery and Resiliency Plan with 500,000 million euros. It's one of the biggest digitalization campaign ever planned in throughout Europe. So it's a big, huge investment. Before starting describing what this plan is, I want to mention that at the time in which member states were negotiating about the budget for each fields, the network Culture of Europe in Action asked and actually tried to lobby for having at least 2% of the budget of each member state used for culture. This has not happened for all the member states, yet yet it has not happened also because other member states decided to include culture in other part of their political and investment programs, such as the structural funds. RFEs, for example. Italy instead decided to use 2.7% of the entire recovery, national and recovery and resilience plan for culture. So for now, even though at the moment, even though we are lacking to fulfill all the mission in time, by the time of the design and writing of the plan, Italy was the first member state that was the member state with the highest percentage of the budget invested in culture. And the main policy developed, as I said, within this plan was mainly it regards mainly the digitalization of cultural heritage. Differently from many other European states, Italy has a strong focus on cultural heritage, so on things. And when it comes to culture, in Italy we call the national approach to culture patrimonial, which means based on cultural heritage and not creativity or creative driven, as it's more common nowadays, both in Europe and in North European countries. This approach has to do obviously with the presence and the remains of the past. So a huge presence, visible presence of remains from the past that as somehow implied and somehow made the cultural policies that have been developed around culture very much based on cultural heritage. So the National Plan for Digitalization is one policy of the kind. I mean, when I describe this policy within classes, I describe it not just as a plan for digitalization, but as a real change of paradigm and a shift of approach towards the perception of cultural heritage in Italy. Why? Because, as I said, the approach towards culture in Italy has always been on things, on sites, on monuments. The national plan for digitalization made a huge shift because from the digitalization of the things, I mean, there is the shift from things to data and the interrelation of data. So this means that a radical shift from the primacy of sites, monument, things, towards the creation of interrelated cultural context if we create that open database of digitalized cultural heritage, we can connect them. So let's say the museum, the Vatican Museum, is not, it won't be as important as it was, because we do not care anymore about the individual artifacts, but we are interested in the interrelation among these artifacts. So now I'll start describing it, because but I want to make it clear that the National Plan for Digitalization is not just a policy of digitalization, it's more a change of approach within the cultural Italian cultural policies. And it is, in fact, a process of digital transformation that is meant to last between 2022 and 2026. I mean, the idea and the hope is that it will be completed by 2026, and it represents, as I said, a process of digital transformation both for the public and for the private organization. It has a huge fund, it has a huge portion of the Italian fund, around 500 millions of euro. And as I said earlier, this is the biggest campaign, digitalization campaign ever put into plan by a member state, not by the private or by the museum itself, but by the public, so by the state. So it's a huge thing. What does the plan involves? So the plan involves different action, which starts with the digitalization itself of the pieces, of the artifacts of both private and public museum. So the first 200 millions of euro have been set and safeguarded for the actual digitalization. So transforming pieces into data. What does it mean? Creating files which contains all the information to which it is attached, possibly a 3D model or a scanned model of the objects, or when it comes to text, when it comes to manuscripts, the file containing all the information can also contain attached reference to other database which are open, such as Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a fantastic open data set, or other public archives, public libraries. So we create these interconnections that has never existed before, because nowadays when you have to consult or look for a piece or a manuscript, you go into the archive and you read and you are not put in the condition to recreate all the connection it has towards other different data set. What does it mean? That, for example, I am studying a painting by Raphaelus. I, through the digital file, I can immediately select and put in comparison other pictures of other Raphaelite paintings from other university, museums, both in Italy and in Europe. The digitalization and the data management plan are the two biggest, let's say, pillars and initiatives in terms of investment of this plan. When it comes to, so these were the investment alongside and this in terms of times is up to now. From now to 2026, the digital library, which is the infrastructure, the infrastructure of the ministry that is dealing and that is managing this plan, we'll have to start working on two other huge themes, which is how do we make use of the open data? So how we guarantee that the data are not used wrongly? How do we make money of the open data? I mean, in Italy, public cultural heritage is property of the Italian state. if we make public and open all this information and all these pictures of the cultural heritage, we make our own financial also assets public and open. How do we guarantee they are not employed incorrectly or for bad reasons or in the wrong context? And also, how do we make money of this sharing, of this usage? This when it comes to these things, these are reforms, and we are at the stage now of let's say trying to understand in terms of politics how we are going to use the open data, because at the moment Italy doesn't have any form of laws or legislation on the use of open data when it comes to cultural heritage. The second step step that will be completed by 2026 actually involved the creation of a huge technological infrastructure, which is called again digital library. And it was meant to be a magnificent platform which contains all these digitalized platform with all these let's say files that contain the data from the cultural heritage, and at the same time it contains information on how to reuse it. And again, it provides the description of which services, so how to reuse the data, how can we use data to make new virtual experiences, how can we use data to make the virtual experience more scientific, more deeper. So this is a process that goes from digitalization to the management of the data to reforms on how to use this data and how public and private institutions can actually make use of them. So this is what it is. One thing I would like also to add when it comes to this policy is I often described it as one of the best policy we ever had, because the way it was designed, I think it's brilliant. Because after the recovery, after the pandemic, the approval of the Italian Nation Recovery and Resiliency Plan, the newly born digital library, which I said is the infrastructure that deals and manage these digitalization plans, decided to put around one table all the stakeholders involved in the sector. So for 1 year, between 21 and 22, we had consultations, we had focus group, we had meetings with the ministry. And for we means private enterprises, museums, directors, and stakeholders, professionals that works in the sector. And what came out is that the actual policy was modeled on the base on the actual needs and perimeters of actions also of the private and the public professionals. And I think the way it was developed is just brilliant, and it is working because it also managed to create a sort of community of active learners and people that want to give back. Because while implementing the policy and the plan, there is a recurring calendar and meeting of feedback on what is actually happening. So what does it mean? That the ministry follows step by step what is actually happening in the implementation of the plan. So along with having written the policy together, the policy has been under investigation and is daily, well, not daily, but let's say monthly, object to revision in case by this group of this community of stakeholders that has been involved from the moment, the first moment. And after 1 year of consultation, the ministry published a manual So this was the first thing the ministry did, published a manual on how the different subsector approach the digital transformation. And along with that, it published it published a communication on the laws and legislation that are at the moment in place in Italy for the digitalization of artifacts and cultural heritage, and another manual on the technologies actually in place that could have been used for implementing the digital transformation. So the first thing that after the period of consultation, the ministry decided to create these 8 manuals actually that deals with specific subsectors, technologies available, and laws and legislation available. So this was the baseline. From there, they started to create the policy. So this is a huge overview on the national plan for digitalization, which unfortunately at the moment is on hold because the leader of the digital library decided to suspend herself because she doesn't agree with the current Italian Minister of Culture. So we are at the moment we don't know what is happening, but the way the policy was structured has been brilliant.
Thank you, Roberta, for this huge panoramic of the situation. I have a little question regarding this topic, and then maybe we can hear by Alexander or move to the second topic. So, do you think we were ready for this shift? And has this match between cultural institution, museum, and tech taken place really? So, is the museum institution changing really, or we are in a kind of difficult moment to say that?
Alexandra, was your hands up as
Yes,
well?
actually, I had the same question with Julia because digitalization is a big topic, and also I would like to ask something extra on Julia's question about because it's not easy for all the art sectors, and this project has to do with the art sector in general. What do you think about not only the visual art, which is easier can be digitalized, and also the paintings and so on? What about the other forms of arts?
It's a huge topic. Starting from Julia, were we ready? No. The recent national report on by the University of Milan, the Polytechnic of Milan, that deals with the digital transformation of cultural heritage, and the percentage it published this year on how many museum had at least a digital plan was under 30% all around Italy. What does it mean? That yes, we can digitalize all these beautiful artifacts, but what do we do with that afterwards? I mean, if there are no competencies, and I'm gonna give you dates, like the actual percentage in a second. So we don't have competencies within museums. Actually, Italian. Just give me a second. The Italian here we are. So we have 45% of the Italian civil servants are over the age of 54, and only 22% have digital skills. And this is obviously one of the worst figure we can encounter. And the problem of digital competencies in the public administration doesn't regard only the cultural sectors. So it regards the entire public administration. But when it comes to public sector, yes, this is a huge problem because we will have all the cultural heritage digitalized, but we want to know what we do with it because within the actual institution there are no competencies to deal with the digitalized cultural heritage. Are we ready? No, even though I'm positive by attitude and by nature, I feel that I hope that will be the kick of a change of approach. I mean, for a fact and by default, people working in this institution will have to deal and will have to start learning how to deal with data, with open database, with more technological assets. But the problem is infrastructural. I mean, when I started, I said that this policy to me is a way to change the approach towards culture and cultural heritage in Italy, and because we are stuck in the first law that was ever published in 1909. About all the Italian policies revolve around this policy that was created in 1909, so more than 100 years ago, and it was about the fact that the cultural heritage belongs to the state. And from there, we never moved. So every actions, every investment funds, every cultural policy, even all the concern, all the even the fact that there are no investment on the production of new arts, of new cultural products, somehow expresses the non-interest of the state towards the new and towards the what it's not. It's essentially cultural heritage, as recognized as such by the Italian law. It is of the state. Whatever is not of the state, it doesn't really entails its authority. So the idea of creating open data set and the idea of having more people working on cultural heritage, to me, it is a process of democratization in terms of management. However, how long this is going to take, I don't know. I mean, for me, uh, it is a change of approach and a good way of using digitalization and the digital instruments, because the idea is to literally remove the primacy of the museum, of the director of museum, of that piece of art belongs to Italy, but it is in the Louvre. I mean, this is no longer important because the thing itself is no longer important, and by doing so, I hope that. I hope that the approach to of the management will change as well. And then going to Alexandra's question, this is kind of related to what I just said. I mean, in the in the Italian recovery and resiliency plan, there isn't any direct investment toward contemporary artists. Any. This is a big problem. And this is also the result of the policy I just tried to explain. A state that only invest on cultural heritage, on things, on sites, on monuments, everything that regards artists and contemporary productions are I don't know. I've always been somehow not at the center of the politics. And when it comes to what the reason plays, I would say almost nothing, because cultural professionals also are, and there is a focus on, for example, even when it comes to digitalization or ecological and digital transition, the twin transition, there is a focus on investing on the actual, not on the single professional or on the individual artist, but on the enterprise, the association. So even if we go out of the public, the interest is on. I would say if artists were a collective and they had I don't know, they had profits, yes, they could apply it to funds. But when it comes to individual artists, at the present there is very little funds, and especially nothing on the national and recovery funds. Then going to the second part of your question, how to digitalize this other sector. Well, I think it's not a matter of making digital paintings, it's more a matter of using digital instruments to fulfill the same objective in a better way. So when it comes to digital transformation of the cultural sector, we are not just talking about digitalizing cultural heritage or paintings or design or architecture. This is the Italian approach, which is missing, I would say, 80% of the other possibilities. And the other possibilities are digital services. So, how do we use virtual reality to make people see my painting? How do I use the metaverse to promote my art? How do I don't know, use Facebook to sell my stuff? Which are the free platform available out there? So it's not just about digitalization. Um, Digitalizing performance is much easier than digitalizing a monument, for example, the Colosseum, because we just have to record it in high, how do you say, high ah,
High resolution.
resolution. Thank you. And that's done. So not the problem, the big challenge with the other subsector is to use digital instruments to make things more easier, in a better way, in a more efficient way, or in a more sustainable way, both economically and environmentally. So I think the Italian approach may lead to the wrong direction when we talk about digitalization, because this is just one portion of the matter. And in Italy, we have not dealt, or we are not managing to deal with all the other stuff when it comes especially to promotion and management. But when we speak about art, when we speak about performing art, when we speak about music, I think that digital instruments are of great have great potentials, especially when it comes to fruition mainly, and also in terms of production as well, and also in terms of connections, in terms of networking. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, Ale.
Yes, actually, you answered my question, and it's a little bit difficult to digitalize everything, and we have for sure to find solutions. Not us, but also the ministries of culture in different areas. And I would like also to agree with what you just said about also the funding possibilities in the national level, because it's the same also here in Greece. Actually, in European level, the art sector can find more funds through different EU programs, but at national level, we have difficulties as we don't have like resources, and the Ministry of Culture doesn't give something. They try to give something companies to recover after the COVID-19 situation, or to become more digital, like creating ESOPs and so on. It was mostly oriented to how to sell your art, to support them to sell their art. But actually, for example, the art sector of theater, you cannot sell your art like this by any SOP or so on. But we're still missing the funding opportunities at national level, for sure, also here. Fully understand the situation of Italy.
Well, yeah, I think
Yeah.
Italy and Greece has a pretty similar situation when it
Mhm.
comes to cultural heritage. Some people here says that when you, I mean, and it's partly true. The investment needed to preserve and conserve such huge sites is big, and all the money goes there. Mainly the thing is that we do not capitalize the other subsector. I mean, the Ministry of Culture only deals with cultural heritage in Italy, pretty much. So yeah. That's the sad situation at the moment. And what happens is most of these institution working within either theater, music, performing arts are try to like prove and experiment digitalization by themselves. When it comes to artists, that's the last level of information when it comes to digitalization, because there is almost no support at national level. And I agree with you that most of the things that they could do, and what is happening is that also supporting institution for Italian artists are redirecting them towards Europe, to European funds.
Yeah, this is also what we do here, and also through the actually the Europe Direct office that we have here in Thessaloniki, and they are started publishing the Cultural Moves Europe just to support both also the cultural industries by hosting people from abroad and also to send people abroad to showcase their art or to gain new experiences and so on. So everything goes uh, through EU funds, nothing national for sure. I agree. And also we need, I think, to consider that also we don't have actually now in Europe also so big funds as if we consider that, for example, the Creative Europe
Yes.
program has reduced the budget for the year 2023-2024, and we had some um, letters sent to the commissioners about the situation because I think that they reduced the budget around 48 million euros, which is a big amount of money. So we still have problem also in the EU funds about the cultural and creative sector.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have almost 15 minutes more, right, Alexandra?
Yeah.
So, yeah, we can talk about capacity building program if you want, Bobby. Maybe what are the key competence of the capacity building and how are they designed to support professional development in the various sector?
Yeah. So as I said, as I said earlier, the capacity building programs within again that were put into place after the pandemic were are mainly regards again the digital transformation, and differently from what we said earlier, these are open to both artists, cultural professionals, director of museums. When it comes to capacity building programs, these are run one by the Ministry of Culture and is directly it is it is an investment under the digital plan for the national plan for digitalization again, which amounts to 155 millions of euros until 2026. And again, there are two directives, so the two directions. One is dealt by but one is run by the Ministry of Culture, and these are money that the ministry will be investing within the institution. So the institution applies to be part of this program, and their professionals can be can follow these courses. Uh, Problem: there are no enterprises in the actual educational programs. So good, but not great. Then there is another directive and initiative which comes with which is still under the national plan for digitalization, and it is run by private enterprises and university, mainly university. This capacity building as deals with the European Twins transition. So within the capacity building programs, that were put into place after the pandemic, there are two objectives. One is the need to deal with the green transition, and the second one to deal with the digital transformation. During this year, we had four calls, national calls, two dedicated to and open to be to and open for application to private enterprises, association, artist collective that want to transform in either digital or green way their own organization. The second one, and this was much little in much smaller, sorry, in terms of money, because each organization could have asked maximum 50,000 euro for either action of greening or digitalization of digital transformation, but of their own organization. And the second one is a bigger program worth 1 million each, and this was a program a call that was directed more to university and center of research. And this bigger program had again two objectives. One towards the digital and the other to the green transition. So university created extra programs within their curricula, and the idea is to implement notions and courses on digital and green transition within the actual university classes for the next professional, I would say so. And the idea is obviously, this is the capacity building program is considered obviously complementary to the action of digitalization itself.
Okay, and are these courses active, and to participate in them, what are the major channels of information? If are directed just for enterprises or small collective, but these are active now. I mean, this program already start and
yes, the calls already opened actually in 2023. One good thing the regions are doing is to replicate the calls. So one, not all the regions, but well, to say so, I have to say first that the jurisdiction of cultural heritage, so the management and property of cultural heritage in Italy is public, is governmental, but the jurisdiction and the territorial jurisdiction of cultural heritage in Italy is regional. So, along with the publication of these codes, which already happened in 2023, and there won't be others, the regions are replicating these codes by regional level. So this is actually quite interesting mechanism that they are putting into place, and the money comes from either the complementary fund or the cohesion fund actually. So within these other two European investment funds, they are replicating the calls that have been put into place by the recovery and resiliency plan when it comes to culture. Which is, I think, very good because it opens up the possibilities to professionals. And also, as you said, it's sometimes very difficult to find where these calls are published. And the fact that most of the times you hear and you listen and you know about this call after the deadline permits other organization to apply. This is happening both in various regions of Italy. So both when it comes to the calls for digitalization, so the region is putting a budget for continuing the process of digitalization, and also when it comes to capacity building. And these are money that comes from the complementary funds both and the cohesion funds.
Okay, thank you for this brilliant information. And the last topic is about discontinuity allowance for artists. If you want to explain a bit what it is, where do we stand in Italy with this measure?
Well, this is something that goes back to Alexandra's question, actually. What does Italy do for artists? Very little. And in fact, we were one of the last European countries to make a law to make structural the discontinuity allowance for artists. This is a policy that actually was not suggested, but actually imposed by the COVID, so by the restriction and the fact that artists, um, musicians, and all the professionals working in the performative sectors, especially, were stopped, was in that they were imposed to stop during the COVID, and and this was part of the sustainment of the recovery funds the Italy put into place during the actual pandemic period as a mean of sustainment. This isn't a novelty. I mean, it happens, as I said, all around Europe, and uh, and it is a law that aims to sustain economically workers that has an intermittent contracts, so that work for short period of time. Take for example a technicians working in theaters. Possibly they work only during the tournée, so they only work during the period in which that piece goes on tour, or when theater has a program. It happens both in cinema and in music and in theaters and in performative arts and ballet, for example, that professionals do not work for weeks or for months, depending on the actual programs. How what do they do in this period of in this moment? Most of the time, I mean, up to now in Italy, they won't they would have been jobless. There were no legislation or policy or structural measure to sustain their inactivity, which does not depend entirely from them. It is the way the sector works. So this is a very important thing to keep in mind. It is as a lot of people say when I was speaking with some professional. It's not that we don't want to work; it is how our sector work. I was talking with a person working in a TV production, and his contract does not let him to find new jobs between one and another, and he's paid weekly because their production may last for, let's say, 1 week, but he has no either well, his specific contract doesn't give him the possibility to look for another job within, let's say, it has 2 weeks stop between one production and another, so his contract does not allow him to look for another job. And at the same time, how do you find a 2 weeks job? I mean, so it is something that is very peculiar of the sector, and it is indeed related to the how the sector, especially the performative art sector works. So the discontinuity allowance, it is a form of proper financial sustainment to artists, performative artists, musician, technicians, whoever work in the performative sector, that can ask a contribution from the state up to 60% of what they earn, and if they earn less than 25,000 euro per year. If they earn less than 25 euro per year, let's try to figure out how little this annual salary is. So if you earn less than 25,000 euro per year, you can ask the discontinuity allowance up to 60% of what you gain, and up to 60% of what you gain. And you can actually ask it if you stop for more than 5 days. if you are stopped, let's say, from work for more than, I think, 5 days, 5 working days. Um, it's a great conquest for the Italian sector. It was a law that was put into place, as I said, straight after the pandemic, because of the condition of the scary condition in which artists were living during that period. And last year was refunded under the Italian national financial law, but it was not structural. This year, with the 2024 financial law, the discontinuity allowance will become structural. So what does it mean? It means that it will be refunded year after year. So it will not be an extraordinary investment, but it will be structural. So it will be stable, and the artist could ask from now on for the discontinuity allowance. That should be, just to give you some figure, should the investment made for this specific move is 100 million, 100 millions of euro, and that should be divided and shared within 25,000 professional working in the sector, and that could potentially ask for it. So it's not a lot of money.
Thank you, Roberta. For me, it was really enlightening to go with you over 2 years of measure, policy put in place national-wide, and also to understand where we are today with digitalization and how actually artists can be part of this epochal change. So thank you very much. And I don't know if you, Alex, want to add something.
I would like to thank you also because I found that we are in a common situation. Of course, we don't like Italy. Unfortunately, we don't have capacity building programs that are created from at national level, from local actors and so on. It's actually we never had, or if we had, it's like one or two, and usually are not open for free. I don't know if it's yeah. Usually, when we have capacity building programs here and comes from an institution, maybe we have some kind of fee. Sometimes it's free of charge, but we have fee, and because no one offers something like this for free. Usually, private organizations provide these things. Actually, if you consider that the Cultural Footprint Project has created to offer capacity building, and it's free of charge through also not only the webinars that we have conducted, but also through the MOOC platform, we don't have something like this at national or regional level. So the thing is, and the conclusion I think is that the artist must try to find that kind of programs that offer free of charge opportunities, and be more committed to follow to follow these programs. So I would like also from my end to thank you for
Thank
this
you.
interesting input and discussion, and for answering to our questions. So if you if you don't want to add something else, I'm going to close this session, and we are going to continue our Facebook Live session on 20th of November with another organization, with Census, which are oriented to the music industry. And we are going to have another speaker there from the music industry, and the person who tried to enter the music market after the COVID-19 pandemic. So thank you very much for this session.
Thank you, Alexandra, and
Thank
thank you,
you.
Julia, for having me.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Okay.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.